Hey guys, so for this week's or this month's columns, I did Crying Wolf on Religious Liberty from the New York Times. Basically, it's talking about a Supreme Court case that's going on right now that basically has two companies saying they shouldn't pay for certain parts of the Affordable Care Act, basically contraceptive care and abortion policies, because it's against their religion. So it's definitely a huge debate, and we're still waiting on the decision. We actually don't really have any information on that right now. For the speaker of the article, it's the New York Times editorial board, which is definitely a great thing in the sense that it has a lot of people who have various qualifications in business and in law and in journalism and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it definitely highlights a bias or a potential criticism because we really don't know if they all contributed equally to the entire article or rather if it was just one person who happened to do it this month. For the occasion, basically, it's the fact that the Supreme Court case is ongoing at the moment. But I also think you can extend the occasion to the fact that there are heated conversations or heated debates right now about contraceptive care and abortion policies in general, whether it's between the church and the government or between individuals in the classroom. For the audience, it's in general anyone who's really interested in that fine line between where law ends and religion takes over and where can you cross that line with exceptions and when you can't. I also think that it's definitely directed toward the Supreme Court justices in this case because it definitely talks a lot about, this case is not correct and that, there's a lot of logical fallacies throughout the case. So I definitely think it kind of is trying to persuade them, these justices, into saying that, this case is absurd. So that's definitely part of the audience. So for the purpose, I think that the article is trying to show how absurd claiming how religion should prevent you from paying for employee benefits in general, because that's definitely a huge thing. It's actually very expensive policies, so I think that's part of the purpose. And then I think the purpose is also to highlight highlight not how expensive, but rather how many ripple effects there could possibly be from this one court case decision. So a person could say, oh, they're a Jehovah's Witness as a CEO, which means you can't take blood transfusions, but rather components of blood. So there's a lot of religious debate there. So they could say that and then not end up paying for anyone who has to undergo blood transfusions and other stuff in that aspect. For the subject, it's basically about the pending Supreme Court case and about using religion as a way to get around the law. But it also extends to establishing the argument of the two companies involved and then just constantly poking holes in their argument. And it's also saying there are other ways to go around this. You don't have to make a court case, but you could also pay other heavy taxes, and then you don't have to provide care for your employees because those taxes go into a general fund, which would then cover these employees when they go to hospitals and other medical establishments. To me, again, the subject also extends to that tremendous ripple effect that's basically determined by whether or not the Supreme Court upholds this case. For the tone, I said it's informative and strident in some sense. I said that it's informative in the sense that it's constantly talking about that fine line between religion and law and about the case in general. But I also said that it's strident in the sense that it's very certain, stubbornly certain, in that it only makes the one argument for how absurd this case is, and it never really offers that chance to allow the other side of the case to be heard. And it also says things like the legal question is whether or not the contraceptive coverage rule violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. It's constantly hammering it, and it's very harsh sounding, which is why I said it's strident. But it also gets the main point across, which is also important. I said it's also strident because it also attacks the Supreme Court case, or the Supreme Court justices, and says that if they didn't uphold this case, if they like uphold this case, I mean, and say that it's completely acceptable, there's a huge set of like ripple effects there, and it's like almost saying don't do it. For rhetorical devices that the author uses for the claim, I said that appeals to authority and counterarguments are huge. And by counterarguments, I mean that like it pokes holes in like the case, and said there are other options. So like again, it said that you can pay a huge tax instead of paying for coverage. It also kind of made fun of the fact that the ripple effects are there, and that saying this one thing isn't necessarily true. I said it also appeals to authority. So what I meant by that is that like it talks about like the ripple effect, and it constantly like poking fun at the government that if you uphold this case, you're letting way for so many other problems. So like for example, it states that the real threat to religious liberty comes from the owners trying to impose their religious beliefs on thousands of employees. So it's basically saying that if you say yes, they can do this, then they're forcing their religion on hundreds of other employees. So isn't that a violation of their religious liberties? So that's also something that comes up. So yeah, that's basically my article. For questions to you guys, I would ask, well, first off, do you think that the companies should be allowed to say it's against their religion and they shouldn't pay for this care? For my second question, I talked a lot about that like fine line between religion and law. So I'm asking you, where do you think that line is? Where do you think it's acceptable to say it's against my religion to do this, and other times you can't weasel out of the law because it's against your religion? So hope you guys had fun. Look forward to your comments.